All right, so in the last video, we learned about Copernicus, right? Who, in his book on the revolution of the heavenly spheres, suggested that the Earth was not the center, that the geocentric or Ptolemaic system was wrong, that the sun was the center, that the heliocentric model was right, that the Earth actually revolves around the sun. As it revolves around the sun, it spins on its axis, right? But then we also said that not a lot of people read the book, not a lot of people could understand the book. So for the public at large, it didn't necessarily change their life. We talked about how Protestants condemned it, Catholics condemned it, because it seemed to contradict, stress the word seemed at first glance to contradict theology. Right? And now we're going to learn about another gentleman named Tycho Brahe. Tycho Brahe was also an astronomer, and Tycho is going to discover some things that do further damage to the Ptolemaic system. Remember, the Ptolemaic system said that the planets and the stars were inside crystal spheres, and that the heavens were perfect and unchanging. Brahe is going to completely disprove that. Now, Brahe didn't agree completely with Copernicus, but he did agree with Copernicus that Ptolemy, or the Ptolemaic system, was incorrect. See, Tycho Brahe, he is going to discover a nova. Right? He thought it was a new star. We now know that a nova is actually a dying star, that once the star is about to die, it gets super bright, kind of like one last heave-ho before the star dies. But anyway, he observed with his naked eye. They did not have the telescope yet, but he observed with his naked eye a nova. Now, the popular theory was that a nova happened in between Earth and the moon, because remember, past the moon, you're in the heavens, and the heavens are perfect unchanging. But Tycho Brahe, through a series of really careful observations and some really difficult math, proved that this new star happened, right, past the orbit of the moon, which means the heavens do change, which means Ptolemy is wrong. And when he published this book, he became a big deal. Right? Also, on a separate occasion, Tycho saw a comet. Now, the popular theory about a comet was it was just a big ball of flaming gas shooting through the Earth's atmosphere, because how could it go through the heavens? Because the heavens are perfect and unchanging. Also, it would shatter the invisible crystal spheres, hold the planets in place, and we would all die due to invisible shards of crystal raining down upon us. Right? So he observed this comet, and through careful observations once again, and through some complicated math once again, he figured out that the comet was moving past the orbit of the moon, therefore the heavens were changing again, and therefore there's no crystal spheres either, right? So Copernicus, he's using math to prove that the Earth went around the sun, and as it went around the sun, it rotates on its axis. Tycho's using math to prove that the heavens do change and that there are no crystal spheres. So we are chipping away at the Ptolemaic system. Now we come to an interesting figure named Kepler, who at one point was the assistant to Tycho Brahe, the man we were just learning about. He said that Copernicus did not get everything correct. Newton thought that the planets moved in a perfect circle, in large part because that's what the church said at the time, both Catholic and Protestant. Says since God is the author of the universe, surely he made the planets move in a perfect circle, because God knows how to make a perfect circle. Kepler, using some of the data that he got from Tycho after Tycho died, he might have stolen that data, by the way, but using data that he got from Tycho and using his own observations, and once again using math, right, he proved that the planets do not move in a perfect circle. They move in an ellipse, an oval shape. Right? What's interesting is when people criticize Kepler for this, accusing him of heresy, false doctrine, accusing him of saying God does not know how to make a perfect circle, Kepler said, I'm not saying any such thing, and who are you to tell God how to make the universe? If God made the universe with planets that move in an ellipse, I'm sure he had a good reason because he's God and you're not, which was a pretty cool comeback. Interesting side note, he took such accusations very seriously because as a child his own mother was accused of witchcraft. Now she didn't die, she was not executed, but he was a little sensitive when he was accused of heresy. So Copernicus, right, used math to prove that the earth goes around the sun, right? And as it does so, it spins on its axis. Tycho used math to prove that the heavens are not perfect and unchanging. He also proved that there are no crystal spheres. Kepler used math to prove that the planets move in an ellipse. And what all this has in common is math. A lot of math that most people couldn't necessarily understand. So in the scientific community, right, there's this huge argument going on, but for the average person, right, they don't understand, nor do they really care. They can't understand the math. What we need is proof that anyone can understand, and that's where Galileo comes in. Galileo is an interesting figure, really smart, really driven, really arrogant. He was a scientist and a businessman all at the same time. Now, he did not invent the telescope. Do not be that student. He did not invent the telescope. He did not invent the telescope. What he did do was buy a telescope, figure out how they were made, and made it better. And then he started to sell the telescope. He actually sold it to cities for military purposes, right? He said, hey, you can see the enemy coming far away, right? And he decided, you know, what would help me sell more telescopes if I started making discoveries with my telescopes. So he started to train his telescope on the heavens to see what he could see, because he had an inkling that Copernicus was right. He was pretty sure that the Ptolemaic system was wrong, was bogus. And so some of the things he discovered with the telescope, one is he discovered sunspots, dark spots on the sun. The Ptolemaic system said everything in the heavens was perfect and unchanging, therefore the sun should have been a perfect orb of light. And he found dark spots on it, and those dark spots actually moved, so the sun was not perfect, and it did change. Now, before you say anything, right, no, he did not stare at the sun with his telescope. That would be stupid. What he did do is he pointed the end of the telescope he looked through at the sun, and his telescope projected an image of the sun on a wall in a darkened room. That way he saw the sunspots, right? And he drew pictures of what he saw. Eventually he's going to put it in a book. Great thing about this proof, no math needed. Just look at the pictures. Buy a telescope yourself. Perform the experiment. You don't need any math. Anyone could understand it. I could understand it, right? Anybody could understand it, right? He also discovered that the moon had craters, right? And that it's made of, quote unquote, terrestrial substances. It's a big ball of dirt. It is not an orb of light, right? It's just a big ball of dirt with mountains on it and craters on it, right? And once again, the cool thing about this proof, all you gotta do is look through the telescope. You do not need math involved. So he is killing what was left of the Ptolemaic theory, right? And anyone could understand this. Then he discovered that Jupiter has moons. Remember, in the Ptolemaic system, everything revolves around the Earth, right? Well, here he found moons going around Jupiter, not around Earth, right? So that destroys the Ptolemaic system. It also means there can't be any crystal spheres, because if Jupiter has moons, you'd have to have crystal spheres that go through other crystal spheres through like a crystal sphere trap door kind of system, and that's just stupid, right? And once again, good thing is you don't need math to understand this, right? So when he publishes his evidence, he gets in a lot of trouble, right? Tycho publishes, Kepler publishes, Copernicus published, and yeah, the church, both Catholic and Protestant, but the Catholic Church in particular, freaks out a little bit, but whatever, most people can't understand it. Anyone could understand this. So the Catholic Church tells Galileo not to publish anymore. And first he obeys, then he starts to publish again anyway, because he's arrogant and he has a temper and he thinks he knows everything. And plus he is right. In his defense, he starts to publish again. Then he really gets in trouble, and the Catholic Church puts him on trial. And the argument of the Catholic Church is that Galileo is spreading heresy, false doctrine. The Catholic Church at the time, not today, by the way, the Catholic Church is a huge supporter of astronomy today. In fact, some of the best astronomers are Catholic priests, which is pretty cool. But at the time, the Catholic Church condemns Galileo. Right? And they say, look, Scripture says that the foundations of the earth shall not be moved. And you're saying that the earth moves, right? Scripture says the foundations of the earth shall not be moved. And Galileo's point was, you're quoting Psalms. And Psalms is poetry. It's not meant to be science. That's bogus. He also argued that God wrote Scripture and he wrote the book of the heavens. And they both have to agree with each other. So, if one seems to disagree with the other, it's not the fault of the heavens, it's the fault of the humans interpreting. So we must be doing something wrong. Right? And of course, Galileo is right on all of this. Right? But the church made him recant, take back everything he said. And he did, because he feared for his life. Legend says, though, as the trial ended and he walked out of the room, that underneath his breath, Galileo said, yet it still moves. Right? One last parting shot. Yet it still moves. Right? And all of his books go on the list of forbidden books in the Catholic Church, but it's too late. The idea is already out there. Right? You got Copernicus' book. It's floating out there now. Right, Kepler's books out there, Tycho's books are out there, Galileo's books are out there. Well, Galileo's books, anyone could understand it. You know, the cat's out of the bag, right? The Ptolemaic system, it's done. It's over. It is dead. It doesn't make any sense. It's not backed up with science. It's not backed up with math. It's not backed up with a telescope. It's gone. It's dead. They long live the heliocentric theory. We are going to have to adjust our worldview to this new reality.